So for some reason, this episode is supposedly being slotted as quote unquote controversial because of the later scenes of obviously slavery and in this world that is a thing, in this, and they're not trying to portray it as a bad thing, they're not trying to portray it as a good thing either. So, it happened, it was a thing, we can't forget about that, but it's not as if they're saying it's the best thing ever, and you can tell that just based off of the characters' reactions and discretions and all of those sorts of things. But with that being said out of the way, let's talk about today's episode, and then after that we can discuss it up a little bit, what I thought about it, and go from there. So we start this episode off with Rudis, and he is actually at the school in the mornings, just kind of talking about campus life and how it's so monotonous with his sword training and his, workouts and everything, and how the fact that Zanaba, my bad, that that Zanaba has been begging him to teach him to make figures, and Rudis is kind of a little sloppy since he hasn't done it for quite a while. So, he's kind of been practicing a little bit to be, able to be a teacher of the art that he is being praised for. And right after that, we get to talking about lunch and how it's not quite up to Japan's standards. He still loves the menu because it slightly reminds him of being home, which is kind of neat, especially being in this world that you've no relations to your home country. So that's kind of neat. And right after that, we get a nice flash to our one and only girl, Elenice, and she's hitting up the students and doing the things she needs to do to survive. And so then Rudis kind of goes showing us like how his class is going, and then he realized that he didn't learn everything about barriers from Roxy. Like, he missed some notes and everything, so he's getting a nice refresher class, and it's pretty neat that he's humble enough to admit that he missed some stuff, even though he clearly paid very, very much attention to his master. And, of course, we get a nice reference to his ED yet again, with the unfettered shogun of the night is still crushing with the firefighters. We get quite a few of those references in this episode. Nothing new for a Mushoku-tensei episode, though. So we go kind of next day, and Rudis is in the library, and he's reading more about teleportation because he's trying to figure out that and what the man god told him. And he's been hanging out with Fitz a bit lately because, obviously he's getting along with Fitz very well. And this whole episode is pretty much just a breadcrumb of how soon Rudis is going to find out that that's Shelfie, and things are going to, it's going to be just as great, if not better, than Paul and Rudy getting back together again in season 1. But we'll get to that when we get to that. But for now, they're talking, and Fitz is like, I lost somebody in that disaster too, you see, so that's kind of why I've been so interested in it. And she offers her help to Rudis in the mass teleportation, in which he obviously agrees to. And Rudis goes and shakes Shelfie's hand and gets this blush sensation and happiness, and questions his sexuality right after this handshake. Oh, it's pretty great. So they're walking back to their campuses, I believe, and, Rudy asks why she always wears sunglasses and, where she stays, and obviously, Rudy thinks it's a guy, so, talking about how she stays in the castle, but she has permission because she's guarding the queen, or the princess, my bad. And so Rudy really starts getting deep into the questions today and asking about how Shelfie can do castless magic, and she even admits that maybe Rudy's asking quite a bit of questions today, and she's talking about she learned from her master and how she looks up to him and still looks up to him, and Rudis wants to meet him, and then we get this nice scene of Shelfie pretty much turning around and looking and smiling with a smirk and saying I don't think that's gonna work because you're him, man. And there's Rudis again asking why Fitz makes his heart beat so fast. And, but he's like, you know what? The God said, I'm sticking with him. It should lead to my cure eventually. And obviously, we all know that it does. So, after that, we get to Zanoba and we get to Rudy and we are trying to train him to do this. And we get a lot of scenes of like Zanoba jacking off or trying to fornicate with a statue. So, but Rudy gets it. Probably not to that degree, but Rudy has been kind of refusing to help him because he knows that he's not ready for it. So he has Zanoba trying to make like figures, like the clay mannequins from just using spell, but it doesn't work. So Rudis goes to the most basic form that he knows and gets a clay block and a knife. But with Zanoba, that does not work because he's got that ginormous strength. So anything agile like that is his enemy. And, Rudis says, we can't give up, just because you can't sculpt like me, we're going to figure this out. So Rudis goes and meets with Shelfie, and he kind of describes the situation, because obviously they chitter-chatter and talk and everything. And so Rudis kind of, tells, and he's like, well, I heard about some prince in the area that had a problem, something, and he hired this, bought a slave to fix that problem. So Rudis is talking about next break, taking Zanoba and going to look for a slave to at least help him to be able to do this. And so, Shelfie's like, oh, next break? And so Rudy kind of catches on and offers her to come next time, and that he would pay her lunch for coming along to help. And so obviously, Fitz is just no. And we get there, and at first Zanoba's gonna be all cocky with Shelfie, but then Rudis knocks him down a peg because, technically speaking, he is royalty. But, whatever. You're the one getting help right now. Be respectful. So obviously nobody's bought a slave here before, but they start browsing, and right off the bat, Shelfie's complimenting this female slave's boobs, because obviously they're both slaves and naked, and she's complimenting her boobs. She didn't know they got that big. So we get this scene of just Rudy and his whole life so far in a nutshell. He's spoken like a true virgin. I was once like you. And I've got another thing to worry about. It's just he goes like, oh yeah, I was once an innocent virgin. I get it, but oh fuck, now I got another problem to work out. But once, Shelfie kind of obligates that, oh, you've probably seen stuff like this too. You probably have some experience. And, just kind of trying to get things out of Rudy. And Rudy's like, oh yeah, yeah. And so Shelfie's like, you do have experience, obviously, but that gets cut really quick because we're looking for a slave that can, cast magic and be really good with carving. So we recommend a dwarf, and a younger one, Shelfie recommends it because then you can start teaching it incantationless magic and build their mana pool bigger. Even though, like Rudy says in the books, they say it's false, but, obviously Rudis and her are proof that's not true, but she says her and her master because, can't let the secret out yet. So they go and ask the guy, and there is one 6-year-old dwarf girl. And they get there, and we see the sadness of, the slaves and the way that they are treated, and Rudis looking at all of them. And let's be honest here, we had slavery-esque vibes in the first season, with the wolf people. And, like I said, this show does not portray it in a glorifying way. So we get to the end of the hallway with the dwarf, and this is where Rudis's time with, learning all these languages finally comes in handy, because she doesn't speak the native tongue. So we get some of the author's original Dwarven language, which is really cool. I love the fact that this series has so many original languages, and they're all so different and revitalized, and they're not just, blah, blah, blah. And I love that. That is one detail of this show that I think brings it even top notch for the isekai realm. But Rudis is looking at her and talking to her, and realizes that she has this hopeless look in her eyes, like someone that longs for death. And he comes to, he tells them that, yeah, he knew somebody like that at one point when they ask what she's talking about. But we know deep down inside that it was him, and he understands where she's at. And he could end it all for her, because he knows that he could offer her all these things, but if she doesn't want to live, she doesn't want to live. He doesn't want to push her through that if he knows it's not going to do her any good. So he gets up and he's, going to clearly buy her to end her life. And she blurts out, "To die, I don't want to die." And it is like the saddest little scene ever. But that's his sign, and they get her, and they're feeding her curry. It looks like she's just gulping it down, enjoying her meal. And Rudis asks for her name, and it's Child of Bazaar of the Holy Steel in Lilitella of the Beautiful Snow Ridge. And Shelfie comes to tell us that since she's a dwarf, they don't get a name till they're 7, actually. So we got to pick a name, and a cute name. So Zenoba says, Julius. And Julius is the brother they ended up accidentally killing when he was younger because of his strength. But, Rudis makes a point that it's a girl, so can we at least name it Juliet? And he agrees with it, And at first she kind of gives this look, and then this, for sure smile with a little blush, knowing that she's going to be taken care of and life's going to get better. So they make this kind of deal where during the day, she'd live with Zanoba and, help him clean and everything. And during the other parts of the day, sorry, I have a brain fart there, he'd teach her languages and incantationless magic so she could build that mana pool and do all that stuff. So slowly and steadily, they can build these figures. And you can kind of see from the end clip that it looks like she's getting it down quite a bit from Zenoba's hand. You could see a figurine being carved out, and it looks really great, and Rudis is over there just admiring it. And that's the end of the episode. A very solid episode, honestly. One of the best episodes of this season. I like an episode like this that really develops all that stuff, and the excitement of knowing that something really big is going to be coming up pretty damn quick. It gets you just blood pumping, and then get a new character like this that's being saved. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. But yes, loved this episode, and I'm excited for next week as always. And let me know what you guys thought about it down in the comments. Do you love this episode? Do you have any extra details you want to add, or just questions? Let's talk about it down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It means a lot to me. And if you're feeling really generous, hit that subscribe button. It helps this channel out on that road to 1K subscribers. I'm gonna start popping out Squid Tales again here actually pretty soon. I got 2 other buddies that I am going to be doing this with. That would be Alex and Mitchell. I don't know if anybody's seen the first episode. That was my buddy Charles. I want to get him on again soon. I had a kind of fallout, and that's mostly my fault. We don't need to get into that. I want to just kind of get a rotating cast and get that once a week again, so we can have 4 videos a week. I do Mushokutensei. I do The Dream Boy is a Realist, and I usually do just an off video of what I'm watching or my thoughts for the week. And then I'm going to get the podcast on the daily week too. So look forward to that coming up in the next couple weeks. And other than that, yeah, that's about all I got. And this has been Squids, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.